The game of chess is the ultimate thinking man's game. And when I say man, I don't mean males. I mean man as in humans. You master the game of chess. You master the art of strategy. Master the art of thinking several steps ahead of your actions before you take them. Master the art of considering the permutations of every single action you take before you take it. Master the art of thinking further ahead than your opponent can think. Master the art of knowing that nothing is handed to anybody in life, that everything must be earned, and when you see something that appears to be being handed to you, that there must be something else behind it. Learning to think on that level, you master not only this board game, but you can master your life. Let's talk about the game of chess. First of all, we're going to go over the pieces in chess, and I'm not going over them as a chess explanation, but I'm going to go over them as a life explanation so you can understand how everything I'm explaining in chess relates to your life as a person. So this is not about a game. This is about real life and why the game of chess is so great. Whenever you hear people say something like, I'm playing chess, not checkers. You ever hear people say that when they're in some type of conflict or some type of situation involving other people? A lot of people say that they don't even know how to play chess, and they couldn't even explain why they're saying it the way that I'm going to explain it here. The reason people say that, what they mean to say is that I'm using strategy and not using tactics. So let me explain first what that means. Strategy, the definition of strategy is having a plan. Strategy is a plan of action to achieve an overall definite major purpose, to achieve a goal. So a strategy could be, if my goal is to gain 30 pounds of muscle, my strategy is get a gym membership, go to the gym 4 times a week, get a personal trainer, start taking all these different supplements, go to sleep at a certain time every day, eat these certain foods, consult with this guy who's a big weightlifter who has all this muscle, who's going to give me more information and keep me motivated, buy some Beats by Dre headphones so I can go to the gym and have something to listen to. All of that's part of my strategy to reach the overall goal. Okay, so when people talk about strategy, that's what strategy is. That means you have a complete plan to get from point A to point B. Of course, we got the pawns. The pawns are the front line pieces. These are the pieces that get out of the game early. If any of you watched The Wire, you remember when D'Angelo was explaining to Bodie and I forget the other, and Wallace, how the game of chess works. In The Wire, the drug dealers, those guys on the corners working, holding the drugs and taking the money, they're the pawns. They get out the game early. They're disposable. There's more of them than anything else. These are just the foot soldiers. They don't have names. They don't have faces. Nobody cares. They're gone. Nobody cares as we replace them with another one. Those are the pawns in chess. Of course, the most important piece is the king. The king only moves one space at a time. If any of you think of your boss or anybody who's the top person in the organization, the king moves one space at a time. They don't have to move around too much because every other piece that's involved on the team, their job is to protect the king. So the king don't have to do all the work. The king got all these people working for him. That's what the king does. Next to the king, you got the queen. The queen is the piece that gets everything done. The queen is the number 2 in the organization. When the king got something that he sees as a problem that the pawns, the soldiers not handling, he talks to the queen and says, hey, make this happen. Now the queen might either A, go jump on the ass of all the other people in the organization and say, hey, you need to go get this done. That means the middle managers. Or the queen will say, you know what, I'm not waiting for y'all to get it done. Y'all ain't understanding what I'm saying. I'm going to get it done myself. The queen has the most power of movement of anyone out there. You get your queen involved in the game, everybody on the other side who's against you got to watch what the queen is doing because the queen has the most power. You lose your queen, you lose a lot of mobility. This is the number 2 person in your organization. Then you got your bishops and your knights. Bishops and knights move and they have certain constricted patterns, but they can move a lot further and do a lot more damage than the pawns can. And then you have your rooks or castles. The rooks can only move in straight lines, but they can move as many spaces as they wish. The rooks help protect the king. They help protect the back lines, and they can affect and destroy your back lines if you let them get into it. So when we talk about the game of chess and the game of checkers, the reason I want to talk about the difference between strategy and tactics is very simple. The game of chess is a game of strategy. Strategy meaning you map out everything that you want to do ahead of time. Every move that you make in chess is for an overall plan of winning the game, of capturing the other side's king. So every move that you make in chess, somebody might look at a move that you make and say that move doesn't make any sense. Why they do that move at that time when they could have did this more obvious move, which would have had this more obvious effect. What a lot of people don't understand is in the game of chess, you may make a move that nobody understands why you're doing it. People are confused. People are like, you stupid. Why are you wasting your time doing that? When that move is just one part of a 50-part movement, 50-part strategy to get you to your overall aim, that no one will understand what that strategy was until the game's over, you won, and people say, damn, that's why he did this and this. That's why he did move number 10, move number 27, and move number 43. It was all part of the overall strategy. So a lot of people don't take time out to think. So when they see you make a move, they only base that move on the effects of that move on the situation at that moment. They don't have that long-term vision. That's what chess is having a long-term vision of your actions and how they're going to have an effect on your overall strategy to reach your number one aim. The difference in the game of checkers is a very basic game. It's all tactical. Tactics, the difference between tactics and strategy. Strategy is a long, drawn-out plan to reach a goal. Tactics is, I'm going to respond to every single thing that happens immediately when it happens. You don't have any strategy or aim. Your only aim is to make it through the next 5 minutes because something's going to happen. You got to react to that. If any of you out there ever get caught up in responding to emails all the time, you're getting caught up in what Robert Greene likes to call tactical hell. That means every single thing that happens, you got to respond to this, then respond to that. It's like you're putting out fires all day. So something happens, you got to respond to that. And something else happens, you got to respond to that. That's what the game of checkers is. One person, black moves this way, then the white moves this way. Then they move, then you got to respond to that move. Then they move, then you got to respond to that move. Whereas in the game of chess, no matter what your opponent does, you have your overall plan. Now you might need to change or alter that plan at some points, but your overall aim does not change. Your goal doesn't change. So everything that happens fits perfectly into your strategy if you've mapped it out well. Because any well put together strategy factors in contingencies. Okay, this might not work. So if this doesn't work, I have this option, and this option. And this over here, if this doesn't work, I have this option, and this option. Every single thing that you plan in a strategy, like the game of chess, no matter what happens, you have another way of getting there. When you're playing a game of checkers, a very tactical game, whatever happens, you're like, oh no, well, now I got to come up with something new for that. Oh, now I got to come up with something for that. Now this over here happened, I got to come up with something for that. We want to get away from tactics, where you're responding to every little thing that happens, and you get into strategy, whereas nothing that happens in the present moment disrupts you. It doesn't disturb your mental focus. It doesn't disturb you have that presence of mind that, okay, you're kind of above the fray. It's kind of like you're looking down on everybody else moving around with all their tactics. Like you ever see an ant hill where you got the ants just out there. It seems like they're all scrambling all over the place. That's how human beings are when they're caught up in tactics. Every single thing that happens, I gotta respond to that. Now I gotta go here. Now I gotta go there. Now I go there. In chess, you already know where you're going. It might happen slowly. Nobody else might not understand what it is you're doing. But when it gets to the end, it'll be very clear, and you reach the goal, which is the only thing that matters. One thing you got to do in chess is something that I was taught, because I used to actually play chess. When I was in middle school, I was on a chess team, and a chess coach, his name was Mr. Shutt, Stephen Shutt. He was really good. He used to play like 6 games at the same time, be beating everybody. Most important thing you got to do in the game of chess is you want to develop your pieces, is what he used to call it. Developing your pieces means you want to get all those pieces, and when we say pieces, we're not referring to the pawns. The pawns are the pawns. The pieces are everything on that back line. Your knights, your bishops, your rooks, your queen. Those are the pieces. You want to develop the pieces to put them in a position where they're exerting a maximum amount of force on the chessboard. So for those of you who don't understand chess, you might not get this part, but once you do understand chess, come back and watch this video and you'll really understand what I'm saying. See, when you have your pieces stuck behind pawns, when any of your pieces is behind a pawn, they're not exerting as much force as they possibly could, because the pawn is in their way of actually getting out there and doing something. How many of you ever been in a situation where you felt constricted? You felt like you were boxed in. As soon as you got out of that box and you were free to do whatever you wanted, you start making a whole bunch of stuff happen because you had nothing in your way. There was nothing blocking you from taking any action that you wanted to take. That's what happens when you develop your pieces. You want to get your pieces out on the board, out in the middle of the board as much as possible so that they have as much power as possible. The more space and more options people have in life, the more power they got. That's what power is. Power is options. Power is the ability to do different things whenever you want to over any amount of ground that you want to cover. That's what power is. So when we talk about developing pieces in chess, you want to develop their power by getting them in a space where they have the most influence over everything that happens. Doesn't mean they're going to do everything, but the capability of them doing something exists. And a lot of times a good threat is better than a good action, because you can pose a threat to someone when they think you might do something. They know what you're capable of doing, and that'll stop them from taking certain actions, and you don't even actually have to ever even do anything. Sometimes people call that your reputation preceding you. When people know you have a reputation for doing certain things, they're not going to risk that you might actually do it on them. They'll rather go somewhere else and find an easier route. So another thing that you want to get into when you're playing chess, you want to get your pieces into the middle of the board. You want to influence the middle of the board as much as possible. The middle of the board are those 4 squares right in the middle. Whenever you set up a chessboard and you look at all the pieces when they're lined up in their normal alignment, the middle 4 squares, that's the center of the board. In a game of chess, usually, and you can look at your own games of chess when you play, whoever controls that center of the board controls the game. And usually the person who controls the center wins the game. So you want to get, when we talk about life strategy, you want to get your pieces influencing and having power over those middle 4 squares as much as possible. When you have influence over those 4 squares, you can dominate any situation. The person in the middle can dominate. So you think about any situation that you've been in life. When you have a person who's in the middle, no matter what happens, that person knows who's where. He knows what everybody is doing. He knows where everybody is going. He has a certain level of influence over every situation going on around them. That person has power, right? Now, how many times have you been in a situation in life where you're kind of in the corner or you're on the fringes of a situation? You recognize, you can see the person who's in the middle or the people who are in the middle, and you have some influence over the people who are right next to you. But when you're on the edge, the people on the whole other side, that diagonally from you, not diagonally, but if you had a circumference, there's a circle, and you make a line going straight from you to the other side, a straight line, you have no influence over the people all the way over there because you're too far away from them. There's no proximity. When you're in the middle, you have equidistant proximity to every single person in that circle. So when you're in the middle, you can control the situation. The person who can see the most, the person who can get the most contact with the most different people, those people are in power. Think of the most successful people you know, the most connected people, the people who seem to always be doing something and getting something done. Think about the spaces they occupy and the organizations they're involved in. They're usually in the middle. Everybody knows them somehow, some way. They have some way that they're connected to this person, that person, and 10 other people that you can point out. They're somehow connected to that person through something. That's what being in the middle is. Everybody sees you. Everybody feels your influence. And if you need anybody you need to get to, you're not too far away from being able to get to them. That's what control in the middle is. And that is a position of power. Chess is every time you make a move, once the game actually starts going, you have to think before you move, okay, when I make this movement, what is my purpose of the move? When I make this move, how is this going to get me closer to my goal? And this sounds extremely obvious, I know, but when you think about it, maybe for yourself, maybe for somebody you know, maybe somebody you heard of or read about or watched on TV, a lot of people make moves in their lives. They take actions, they say things, they do things, they move around, and they have no idea whether it's getting them closer to their goal, and even worse, they have no idea what their goal is. They don't even have a goal. They're just moving around. Whatever happens, just happens. They have no goals, they have no plan, and thusly they have no strategy. You can't have a strategy without a goal. Strategy only exists when there's a goal to reach. When you're playing a game of chess, Every time you move a piece, before you even move it, you have to ask yourself, how is this movement getting me closer to my goal? Before you touch the piece. A lot of times in chess, when you're playing somebody who's a serious player, if you touch a piece, you have to move it. So before you even put your hand on the piece, you have to know, when I move this piece here, how is that getting me closer to my goal? Another question you got to ask is, if I make this move, am I putting myself in danger? Am I putting this piece in danger of being taken by moving it here? If I move this piece from where it is, am I giving up a position of strength, or am I moving out of a position of weakness? These are things you got to ask every time you make a move in chess, and there's also something you have to ask yourself every time you make a move in life. When your opponent makes a move, this could be in chess or it could be in life. When your opponent makes a move, you need to assume that your opponent knows the game at an ultimate level, that your opponent is strategizing just as much as you are. So when your opponent moves, ask yourself this question: why did they make that move? What are they setting up in making that move that's getting them closer to their goal? And if we're talking about competition, if you're in business, if you're an athlete, what is this person doing that's setting them up to be in a position to beat me by making that move? How is that move helping their strategy? How is that move getting them closer to their goal? When that person made that move, what threat are they posing by moving there? What position are they in now that they weren't in before they made the move? Another thing to pay attention to, when this person makes the move from point A to point B, what are they giving up? What did they leave open by leaving the position they were in to get to the position that they are in? They might have been leaving something open without knowing it, or they might be leaving something open knowing that it's open and baiting you into moving there. So you have to ask yourself, you have to think a few steps ahead. I think this is a very important thing. You'll hear several times when you're talking about chess and strategy. You must think ahead. If I do this, what's going to happen 10 moves down the line because of this move? If I make this action right now, if I go talk to this person right now, if I take this action in my life right now, what's going to happen 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years down the line because of this one action? And if someone you're opposing, someone you're going against, someone you're competing with makes a move, ask yourself the same thing. What are the ramifications of that move? Why did that person make that move? How is it a threat to me? How are they putting themselves in a stronger position? How are they putting themselves in a weaker position? What opportunities are open now, and what threats does that person pose because they made that move? We call that a SWOT analysis. If any of you never heard that, that's SWOT. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. You should be able to assess those for yourself in every area of your life at any given time. Along those same lines of strategy in the game of chess, always think when you make an aggressive move, are you putting yourself in danger of the counterattack? Counterattack in battle, in warfare, is when one side makes the first move. They make an attack coming after you, and the other side somehow, some way survives your original attack, and they counter that attack with an attack on you to put you in a worse position than you were in before you started with your first aggressive movement. In the game of chess, how that works, you might make an aggressive move to go towards your opponent's king or towards your opponent's queen or any piece. And in making that move, the only thing you're paying attention to is what you're going to gain if this works out. Okay, so you move here. All right, now I'm threatening his queen. If he don't move that queen out the way, I'm going to take his queen on the next move. That's what you're thinking, but you didn't even pay attention to the fact that by moving there, you put your piece in direct danger of being taken with no recourse. And that's something that happens to people in life all the time. You see the big shiny pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. So you're making all your moves to go straight towards that pot of gold. Well, while you're running towards the pot of gold, you don't even see the pothole in the road. And you fall right down into the pothole and it's done. You never reach the pot of gold. And somebody who saw ahead, they could see. They see the pot of gold, but before they start running for it, they say nothing is going to be handed to me that easily in life. Understand, in life, no great accomplishment is going to be just handed to you without any hard work, without you overcoming some setbacks, without you dodging some possible potholes. So before you start running straight towards something that looks like an easy grab, ask yourself this question: what could be hiding between where I'm at and where that is that I'm not paying attention to? What is it? you know that nothing gets handed to you in life. So with that idea, with that principle in your mind, know that when you see something that looks like an easy win, something that's just handed to you, ask yourself, what bait could I be taking right now that I'm not paying attention to? How is this going to cost me? Let me take a closer look. Let me think about this for a little bit before I go running straight to that pot of gold and run right into a pothole or right into a trap or right into a counterattack that I don't even see coming from behind me or from my sides that I'm not thinking about because all I'm paying attention to is that big shiny piece of gold in front of me. This happens a lot of times in life. People who are really smart and they think ahead, a conniving type of individual, Machiavellian type of individual, they'll dangle a shining object in front of a fool. Because a fool is a person who sees something that looks like an easy win and they run straight towards it because they believe wins just come that easily in life. When any smart person, any thinking individual knows that that doesn't happen. So that conniving person dangles that shiny object. Somebody comes running for that shiny object. Boom, they get taken for their money. How many of you ever bought lottery tickets? How many of you ever been on the train or on the bus and you seen some guy with 3 cups? And he says, all right, if you pick the one with the ball under it, you win $10. And you so sure you're going to pick the right one and you end up losing all your money. How many people go to Las Vegas or Atlantic City with a certain amount of money that they're willing to lose and then they lose it and they come back with nothing? Yeah, I know a few people win. I know the people who win make the news. People who win get on TV. People who win are the big stories, but nobody pays attention to the millions who lose in order for that one person to win 100,000. All right, it's $1 million loss for 100,000 to be won. It's actually worse than that. The casino business is the best business for a business owner to be in because you're guaranteed to make money. You won't lose money running a casino. It's damn near impossible. Once the casino's up and running, actually, you're going to make money because there are going to be way more losers than there are winners. So don't go running after that shiny object that's dangling in front of you without thinking first. When I make this move to get towards it, what danger am I putting myself into? Finishing the job. When you're playing a game of chess and you have your opponent weakened, you're taking a bunch of his pawns off the board, you're taking all of his pieces, all he's down left to is a couple pieces or maybe a couple pawns or a pawn or just his king. You got to be able to finish the game. You got to be able to take your knife and stick it through your enemy's throat and finish him once and for all. Not weaken him and then walk away because he's weak. No, you got to be able to kill. They call that the killer instinct. And players always ask about that. How can I develop the killer instinct? Killer instinct is not about being a mean person. It's not about being angry. It's not about emotions at all. It's about having the fortitude to finish the job when it's time to finish the job. In the game of chess, I played against a player one time who had me beat. I made some bad moves. I gave up a couple pieces because I wasn't paying attention to the board the way I should have been, and they definitely should have beaten me. They had way more pieces than me. I was at a supreme disadvantage, but they couldn't finish the game. They didn't have that killer instinct. They didn't know how to finish the job. I ended up coming back. I ended up getting one of my pawns to the end, got my queen back. For those of you who don't know the game, I got my queen back and ended up beating that person because they didn't know how to finish. You got to know how to go for the kill. When you're in a position to win, you're in a position where the win is in front of you, you got to be able to step up and take it. There's a TV show called Game of Thrones, and one of the best lines in that show, I'm not going to go over the plot because it doesn't matter. A woman said to one of the men in the show, she said, "You could have been the king. You could have been the king and you didn't take the crown." And the guy said, "Well, I didn't want the crown. That's why I didn't take it." And she said, "When you play the Game of Thrones, there's only 2 options. You either win or you die." And that's exactly how it goes in life. In life, you have probably had, because everybody probably has had, and we learn, a situation where you could have went in for the kill and you would have had some type of success, something that you would have considered a success, but you hesitated. You didn't go in for the kill. You didn't put your knife through your enemy's throat. And the enemy doesn't have to be a person. The enemy could be some feeling that you want to get rid of. The enemy could be some situation that you wanted to come to an end by capping it off with a victory, and you didn't do it. And you had regret. And then you saw somebody else go and take that win that should have been yours because you didn't have that killer instinct. In chess, you got to know how to finish the game. If you take too long to finish, and that other player maneuvers in a certain way, you can actually have a tie in the game of chess. They call it a stalemate. And if you're at an advantage and you end up in a stalemate, then it's kind of like you lost, because you had a win right there in your hands, but because of your inability to finish it, you lost it. So the killer instinct, when you're in a position and you know it's over, your opponent is weakened, they're on their last leg, all that's left for you to do is finish them, you got to have the heart and the smarts and have the sense of timing to know when to finish it. Baiting your opponents. One thing that can happen in chess, once you become a seasoned player, you can learn how to bait your opponent into making a rash movement that's going to cost them in the long run. When you're dealing with someone who's not as strategic a thinker as you are, what you can do is outthink people. So you can think, if you're dealing with a person who can only think 3 steps ahead, and you're capable of thinking 4, 5, 8, 20 steps ahead, then you can outthink them. You can outmaneuver that person and maneuver them into a position of weakness where they basically hang themselves. They hang their own rope and hang themselves from the ceiling. All you got to do is think a few steps ahead of what they're capable of thinking. So in the game of chess, knowing that that person is going to go after some bait you put out there, you put out some bait. You let them come take the bait. And when they take the bait, you already got a trap set up for them. So you get them to move one piece that's protecting their king out of position, and they think they just got an easy piece. They're like, oh, you just moved that piece, I'm taking that. They think they just got an easy piece off you and took your piece off the board. But what they really did was maneuver out of a position of strength into a position of weakness. But they weren't paying attention to that because all they saw was that shiny object dangling in front of them. They ran after the shiny object, left their position of strength, and now you just use it against them. That's outthinking people, outmaneuvering people. So when you know that you're a strategic thinker, or when you become a strategic thinker, pay attention to the mind of the person that you're up against. If they can't think as far ahead as you can use that against them. All you got to do is map out your plan further than they're capable of thinking out a plan. KYP. It's called Know Your Personnel. When I was playing college basketball, one day we had practice. One of our assistant coaches was running practice. And about 3 times in the same practice as we were scrimmaging, I threw a hard bullet pass to our center. And all 3 times he dropped the pass and the ball went out of bounds. And I was getting frustrated. I was getting pissed off at him because he kept dropping the ball. And the assistant coach said to me during the game, he said, Dre, remind me after practice to tell you something. I went to him after practice. He said, Dre, he said, KYP. You know what that stands for? I said, no. He said, know your personnel. You know that guy, the guy I had passed the ball to 3 times and he dropped it. He said, you know that he can't catch. You know that you can't throw passes like that to him. So when you throw a pass like that to someone whom you know can't catch it, then it's not his fault, it's your fault. Because you didn't know your personnel, or at least in the moment you didn't know your personnel. How does that apply to the game of chess? In the game of chess, each piece has certain capabilities. The only piece that can do anything is the queen. The queen can go anywhere, as many spaces as she wants at any time. Every other piece in the game is limited in some way, shape, or form. What does that mean for you? When you have people around you, your friends, your family, if you're in some type of organization or any type of team you're on, business, basketball, sports, otherwise, whatever, understand that every person has certain capabilities and certain limitations. Your job as a leader, your job as a strategist, your job as a thinking individual is to never put a person in the position in which they are incapable of getting the job done. If there's a job in the game of chess that's perfect for the bishop, you don't send a pawn to do that job because it's not going to get done. If you have a job that a pawn can get done, you don't waste energy, you don't waste personnel by using your queen to do a job that a pawn should be doing. Any person you deal with in life, you got to learn to look at that person, observe them, observe what other people do. Don't be so caught up in your own mind that you're not paying attention to what's going on around you. Once you've been dealing with any group of people for a certain amount of time, especially if you play sports, and even if you don't, if you're in any type of business, you have coworkers. You don't have to be the boss. You could be on the lowest level. You have people around you. You should know those people. Know what this person is capable of. Know that if there's a negotiation that needs to happen. You need somebody who can go in there and talk to the other person, develop a rapport and get them to be friends, and then walk out still having what we want while the other side thinks that they also got what they want. There's a certain person who's good for that, and there are people who are terrible for that. It's your job to put the right person in the right place. If there's a situation where you need somebody to be kind of a bulldog, you need somebody to be tough, you need somebody who, if need be, will be an asshole. They got to, because there's something that absolutely must get done by any means necessary, and it doesn't matter if somebody's feelings get hurt. You know there are certain people who are perfect for that job, and there are certain people who are terrible for that job, right? And when you deal with a group of people, it could be 5 people you deal with on a regular basis. You know who would be the best, and you know who would be the worst. Know your personnel and put the right person in the right place. The same thing that happens in a game of chess, it happens in life. Know who's good at things. Know what this person can do. Know what this person can't do. And don't focus on what they can't do. Put them in a position to do what they can do. Because when you put a person in a position to do what they can do, you're putting them in a position to succeed. And when a person succeeds over and over and over again, what builds? Confidence builds. And the more a person builds confidence, the more capable they become, and the more useful of a tool they become for you. And this might be a dispassionate way of looking at things, but it's a realistic way of looking at things. When you're in an organization or on a team, every individual is a tool. And if you use the wrong tool at the wrong time, you're going to get bad results. If you have a screw that needs to be screwed in, and you go grab the most expensive hammer you could find in the hardware store, you're not going to get the job done. That's a great hammer, but you don't need a hammer for this job. You need a screwdriver. When there's a nail that needs to be banged in, and you got a great power saw, that's not going to get the job done. It could be a $500 power saw, but it's the wrong tool for the wrong job at the wrong time, and you didn't know your personnel. It's your job to know what needs to be done, and then know who's the best person to get it done. It might be you. Know when it's you, and when it's not you, know who it is. Knowing the mind of your opponent. You're playing a game of chess, as I talked about earlier. It's not a tactical game. It's not you do something, then I do something, then I'm going to react to what you did, and you react to what I did, then I react to what you did, and you react to what I did. No, that's tactics. We're not talking about tactics here. We're talking about a way higher level of thinking. Whereas tactics is like walking along the street. It's like walking down the street in your neighborhood. Strategy is like flying over the neighborhood in a helicopter. So you don't see just what's in front of you to your left, your right, and behind you. When you're in a helicopter, you see what everybody sees. That's what strategy is. You see everything, not just one thing or not just the immediate things around you, but you see what everybody's doing, what direction everybody's going in, and where everybody is heading. You can see if somebody's walking into danger. You can see if somebody's walking into a place of positivity. You can see if somebody's sitting there doing nothing. You only have to hear what they're saying because you're up in the helicopter, but you can see by their actions what they're doing. And that's another thing we're going to get to. When we talk about the game of chess, knowing the mind of your opponent. When you're playing chess, it's not just the movements that that person is making. The person that's sitting across from you, what is their mentality? Are they an aggressive person who likes to make moves that just seem aggressive, that are going to get attention in the moment? Are they that type of person? Because if they're that type of person, you can use that tendency against them in the game. You can bait them into doing something aggressive, which once your counterattack comes through is actually going to destroy them. Are they a person who's timid? When they're in a position where they could make a bold maneuver that would actually put them in position to win a game, will they hesitate? Will they hem and haw over it? Will they think 3 and 4 times again before they actually make the move? Again, when you're dealing with a timid person, you can use a bold, aggressive style and put them back on their heels and destroy them. When you got an aggressive person, you can play back and appear to be timid, and use it against them. It's kind of like a wolf hunter. Somebody's out hunting wolves, they can pretend to be a sheep because a wolf's going to come after the sheep. And when the wolf comes after what he thinks is an easy meal of a sheep, who has the last laugh? Is that hunter who has the gun, right? It's the same thing when you're dealing with the mind of your opponent. Now, your opponent, are they a person who likes to think a lot? Do they need to have 100% of the information before they make a movement? If your opponent is that type of person, how can you use that against them? You make some move that they can't understand what you're doing. So when you make a move that kind of confuses them, they're going to spend all their time, instead of focusing on their strategy, they're going to spend all their time trying to figure out what you're up to. Now they're distracted because all they're thinking about is what are you doing? When they're thinking about what you're doing, all you got to do is keep confusing them. You envelope them in enough smoke, a big cloud of smoke where they can't see what's going on around them because they're thinking so much about what is he doing, what is he doing. You can use that against them, and then you can come right on their flank and destroy them while they're still trying to figure out what you're doing. So it's knowing the mind of your opponent. When you're playing a sport, when you're running a business, that's called gathering intelligence. Know as much as you can about the people who are competing against you. And when you know their mentality, no matter what their physical abilities are, you can destroy them if you know their mentality. How many of you out there ever knew somebody who had who was tall, they had this wide frame, they had big muscles, but mentally they were a midget? Mentally they were soft. There was no toughness, no resolve, no determination, no confidence whatsoever. They looked the part, but they didn't have any of it up here mentally. Their physical frame did not match what they had mentally. And that person can be destroyed. All you had to do was push them one time and they fall to pieces. Like they fall like a house of cards. That's because you knew their mentality. If you just went off their physical, you might think this is the Incredible Hulk, toughest person in the world. We're not going to mess with this guy. But once you know their mind, you can destroy somebody if you know their mentality. How many of you ever knew somebody who was small and frail and old and weak? At least that's the way they looked. But then when you get to know that person, they're the toughest person in the room. They're the smartest, they're the strongest, they're the most dedicated, most persistent, most disciplined, and they're not taking shit from nobody. How many of you know a person like that? I'm sure all of you do. And if you don't know a person directly, you know of somebody like that. Mentality. So that weak, frail appearing person could destroy that person, that 6'5" guy with the big muscles, right? Why? Not because in a weightlifting contest, because in a mental contest. And the mental is to the physical as 3 is to 1. Napoleon Bonaparte said that. So know the mind of the person that you're going against. The thinking individual's game. The main difference between chess and checkers is that when something happens in the game of checkers, somebody immediately has to respond. And then somebody immediately responds to that. Then someone responds to that. And it's just a bunch of responses going on back and forth forever. It's like watching a bunch of ants running around, right? All confused. It's going this way. Now let me change direction, go that way. No, now let me go that way. No, now let me turn around and go that way. The game of chess, anything that happens, anything that takes place in your orbit, you're able to look at it and analyze it and say, what does this mean? What does this mean for me? What does this mean for my opponent? What does it mean for the person who did it? What weakness has been opened up? What opportunity just opened up for me? What threats are being posed to me? What positions of strength do I occupy right now? And what weaknesses do I have exposed right now? What can I do right now to improve my situation? What can I do right now that would deteriorate my situation? What opportunities does my opponent have that they may exploit? What threats do I pose to my opponent that I may be able to exploit? That's the thinking man's game. And all those things, all those thoughts that I just went over happen in your mind before you take any action. And these become immediate. They become instinctive. They become automatic anytime something occurs when you're a thinking individual. When you're a reactive, tactical individual, every single thing that happens, you immediately got to respond. That's checkers. We ain't playing checkers. The game of chess, everything that happens, you think about it. What does this mean? How can this help me? How can this hurt me? And the exact same questions for your opponents. When you're able to outthink individuals, you can beat them in anything, no matter their physical resources.
Thanks for checking out this video. Make sure you follow all my top content up here. Follow me on all your favorite social networks right over here. And make sure you are subscribed to catch all the new content I put on this channel every single day. Work on your game.